In the heart of every man, there's a strength we can't deny. Through the storm and through the pain, we're reaching for the sky.
Are we even supposed to talk to the audience? Hello everyone. This is Jeremy. I am with my friend Gerhard, and this is the first episode of a podcast concept which is called Resurrect Patriarchy, and that I'm going to introduce to you. First of all, I hope you will forgive my accent. I am French and proud of it. But still, I'm here to speak a little English with you. Gerhard, do you want to say anything before I start my little presentation?
Yeah, I'm Gerard or Gerard. I am also just extremely honored to be a part of this and to be here with my friend Jeremy and to be on this journey with him and to be here with all of you, everybody that will inevitably find us along this journey, seeking truth and finding a better future together where we're more united and less fearful and afraid of one another. I am South African and proud of it. And I'm just so happy to be here.
Cool. So yeah, I let me walk you through how I define my journey and what brings me here today talking about this forbidden word, which is patriarchy. So, what is the goal of the Resurrect Patriarchy project? I would say that on a personal level, for me, it's about going from zero to hero as a man and figure out what that means, what that means, and documenting this process. And so, let me describe to you who I was 2 years ago. I was about to hit 30 years old. I was basically jobless for about 6 years. I was living in my parents' house. I had no friends, no community. I was estranged from family. I did have homosexual fantasies and encounters. I had a severe addiction to porn.
Yes.
And it came to the point where I eventually started to question my gender. I wanted to abolish patriarchy that I blamed for everything. I was jumping from one patient project to the next that I was always doing on my own and never finished anyway. I was pathologically unable to admit that I was ashamed of myself. I was depressed. I was angry. I was despaired. And then this happened. Mostly, I started to meet with a therapist, and I would say enough of a right therapist. I started to be okay with the fact that I was not okay. And so emotions were released and energy was free to socialize again. More and more opportunities and synchronicities started to show up. I faced one by one my limitations, my shortcomings, which are endless. I got out of victim mentality. And as I was putting in the effort, I was being met within with what I would describe as a Christ-like figure, while having never been raised into the Christian faith. And so this is me now. I am past 30 years old. I still live at my parents' house. But, and this is a big but, I got rid of my addiction to porn and unhealthy sexual attachments. I grew out of my confusion regarding gender. And among other things, I have started to see results with an online business. And so now I am committed. As a man, I commit to go from zero to hero, always getting back to face my limitations just as they are and challenge myself to overcome them. And so, how has it been looking like? It's a mix of short-term and long-term commitments. Among the short-term commitments, I started meditating, doing breath work, doing deep relaxation. I started to join men's work groups with accountability partners, and I started to bond with men, which is something that was quite rare in my life until this point. And yeah, I started to seek the guidance of elders and guides and mentors of all kinds, and it was really, really helpful to me. And yeah, little by little, I started to develop my own practice, and I committed to do deep work every day on this practice and turning it into a business that will hopefully make me move out of my parents' house at some point. And when it comes to more long-term commitments, the list is not exhaustive, but I commit to practice enough martial arts to be a little dangerous, at least. I commit to earn my own money and enough of it to do the polarity training. I don't know if you ever heard about polarity, that I need in order to commit long-term to a woman and build a family. And I commit to learn how to build my own home and grow my own food.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Really?
So my mission statement, if I had to describe it, is to document this process of going from zero to hero as a man, and by following the guidance of coaches and elders, and with the particularity that I'm looking for elders that are holding on to what I identify to the spirit of traditional masculinity and patriarchy. And we will have plenty of episodes to talk more about what this means and what this doesn't mean, especially. And yeah, use this guidance, use this documenting process as leverage to bring the work of these coaches to the masses, publicly take a stand in order to resurrect patriarchy in a healthy way, and eventually develop my own practice and tools around these concepts. And so when it comes to the podcast, more especially, when I talked about it first to Gerhard, who is going to comment on all this as soon as I'll be finished, I described the concept of the podcast to him with these words. I tell my story as a former LGBT and share what I've learned about gender, spirits, the masculine and the feminine, the gender as both a binary and a spectrum, and both a manifestation of biology and a social construct, etc. And I make a clear difference between the shadow of masculinity and what the original spirit of patriarchy is, in my opinion, which is caring, devotional leadership, and being ready to always make more sacrifices for my people. And also kind of it's about this concept that respect and reverence towards men is not about worshipping their ego, it's about inspiring them to serve. So yeah, the idea of this podcast is to document my process of growing confidence in my masculinity through the work of resurrecting patriarchy within me, the former woke gender questioning guide, and hopefully resurrecting patriarchy in society. And what I want to do is to offer a compassionate, non-antagonizing view on these topics, but still addressing them, which basically means I don't want to spread or encourage hate of any kind, towards any people, but still be able to talk about these things, because I believe it's really important that we find wise ways to talk about gender, to talk about masculinity, to talk about patriarchy as something that binds us all together, rather than tearing us apart, tearing us all apart. And so, yeah, what I imagine how it could work, and this will be kind of the end of this first presentation, is to start with a topic or a question or a concept around all this patriarchy wide area, and yeah, uh, like talk things through for a while. So exposing an opinion and then trying to think against it, so you do not, like, I believe it's really important, and especially as men, that we do not show complacency towards ideas who are actually feeding our egos, but really try to also catch us in the process of feeding our egos, and find a more balanced way to talk about any subject, really. And yeah, then have a little dialogue with Gerhard, and maybe more men with time. I hope so. And yeah, that's basically it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for setting that up so properly. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you really laid out the foundation quite clearly as to where we're coming from, and obviously more specifically where you're coming from. But I relate to that deeply because, for the most part, because of your past, I grew up Christian in South Africa, and in a very, very conservative church at the end of the day. If I look back at it now, I mean, I was a young boy and I had to wear a suit. So if that isn't conservative, I don't know what is. A church with a dress code for a little boy, and going to all forms of Sunday school. And anyone from South Africa would really know what I'm talking about. I don't regret any of my childhood, even the parts that are a little bit darker, because if I look back at it now, a big reason why I went down for a while, the LGBT road. And not that it's a problem, I'm not crucifying these people. Anyone that has any form of gender dysphoria or any confusion, the reality is that reality itself is confusing, and everything is very spectrum like. Nothing is just black and white. It just isn't. There's nuance to everything. And at the end of the day, I see that now more clearly than ever, thanks to personal experience as well. And I've loved so dearly so many of the people that I've met along this journey, and specifically because of this path that I've been thrust into. Because as a child, I had very strange sexual experiences, which you can now consider, forms of sexual abuse, with men, some slightly older than me, and these things definitely shaped my perception of sexuality before I even knew what sexuality was. But I never lost attraction to women. I just became more confused and more withdrawn towards them. And that led to extremely unhealthy relationships with them, where there is no real, deep, true intimacy of the vulnerable kind, the way that you can actually open up and actually truly understand the other person, because they're so different from you. The reality is women are very different from men. We need to face this in society. This idea that we don't even know what a woman is anymore, I mean, that is just so far beyond where we should be. It's actually in many ways unacceptable, but it also tells me that we're growing as a global culture, because I see it like this: we came from ignorance, and we slowly eradicated ignorance, but now we're moving back to a phase of deep ignorance and deep questioning, even though we have the most resources and information we could ever have at our fingertips, and so many other things. all of our cultures are mixed in pretty much every country you come from, but we're now being thrust back into uncertainty in so many ways. I think it's a much deeper sense of uncertainty, because I believe that we're piercing the last veils of really becoming a wise species. I see it as a childhood's end for the entire human race. And by the way, that's a little reference for a trilogy of movies that I would like people to watch. Just a heads up on that. But um, it it really it has nothing to do with the things we're talking about. It's just society growing out of its childlike nature, but at the end of the day remaining in a state of childlike wonder, because we need a wonder for what reality is, the mystery of reality. The problem with things being too structured, and this is where I say we moved out of ignorance into a state of certainty. That's this idea of conservatism and everything, that a lot of our negative views of patriarchy really is built on, is that the structures around us are crumbling, but these structures have kept us intact. It's the walls we built around ourselves, and it worked for a while, and it's still working in many ways. But a lot of it is crumbling, and a lot of people are questioning as to why we're stuck in all these cycles of systematic abuse of all kinds, and people being afraid of one another, and being afraid of strong men at the end of the day, and breaking them down. But that's just not the case. Most of our world's been built on that, and that's something that we cannot ignore. We cannot. I mean, in my country, I see it a lot, where statues are being burnt down and broken apart, and buildings of figures that shaped this country are being completely demolished, and our history is being ripped away from us, and that is creating such a massive divide, even more so than the racial divide that's in my country and all over the world. I mean, just recently in America, a movie was released, which I haven't seen yet. I don't know where to watch it. I've tried to find a place for it, but it's by Matt Walsh. Not condoning the person or what he stands for. It's this is not a podcast about him, but the movie is basically titled Am I Racist?" And he's just going around asking people at the end of the day questions about racism and this idea of at the end of the day, the patriarchy and white men that have ruled the world for so long, and the fact that they have been slave owners and all these things. And if you're just a racist for being a white man, and a lot of the folks he talks to just calls him a racist for the fact that he's a straight white man. That is insane. By the way, what is the fact that he's a cisgender individual? What does that have to do with his status on the way he views races all around the world? All of the nuances of race. This man, as far as he's concerned, barely even thought about race in the 90s and the early 2000s, and now he suddenly starts to notice this curve of change in his own country, in America, where people are speaking about it more in a very negative context, that it's a way to divide us. It's speaking directly to the fact that it's supposed to divide us. You are different from me. Your ancestor did something to my ancestors. You are doing something to me now for just existing and for having whatever advantage you have because of the way things are structured to benefit you versus me. But we keep overcorrecting. And he also mentions this. I mean, we all should be aware of it. In my country, it's also very clear where we're trying to overcorrect for the very recent apartheid regime that was in my country, overcorrecting for the Black community. And in turn, it never really helped anyone, especially the Black community. The most insane part about it is most of the Black community in my country are probably worse off in many ways. I'm not saying, and again, I'm not condoning what happened. I'm not condoning racism. I'm not condoning a ruling class of men. I don't think either of us are. Of course not. It's MJ mentioned that we're not here to spout hate. It's a healthy sense of masculine energy that's required on this planet to avoid more overcorrection taking place, because we keep overcorrecting. This pendulum keeps swinging back and forth, and we're becoming more and more erratic. But the problem is we can't keep doing it, because we're now at a state on this planet where if we keep doing this, there won't be a human race left to keep overcorrecting, at least the human race we know now. We will thrust ourselves back into the Stone Ages if we do this. This is not a joke at the end of the day. We know this. I'm going to have a lot of fun with MJ, with Jeremy. Sorry, that's just a nickname I give him. But with Jeremy on this podcast, we're gonna have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a lot of wonderful things. I'm going to expand on topics of the fact that we're as a community. At the end of the day, this comes down to us embodying a higher state of masculine energy within the collective consciousness of this planet. We're trying to actually cultivate a new view for everyone to come together with, and to cherish what came before, instead of trying to constantly break down things and think that we're reinventing things, but all we're doing is overcorrecting, and we're not reinventing the wheel here. We keep doing a lot of the same things, and it's time to just break out of that cycle. So I will go more in depth with my history, but at the end of the day, it is in many ways similar to what MJ's story is. We found each other online through pure chance, if you want to call it that, but I think it is much more than just pure chance, because we don't know the relationship between cause and effect, and all the small decisions you make towards certain so-called goals, thinking that you've got everything planned out, but you don't know what's going to come if you open your heart up to what could be available to you on the path that you're walking. And if you embrace a path of surrender, things happen that are truly magical. And I believe whoever will find this with us, who's ever going to walk this path with us, will experience this magic with us. And I think I can speak for both of us that we're going to embrace this with all of you with an open heart and mind. And we're all going to find a better way forward. We will. I believe in us. I really do.
We are already, I believe.
Amen. Amen to that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It gives me idea, but I believe we're going to make another episode on this topic that you discussed first. That there is, this what you call overcorrection, and obviously at least for me, the question that comes to mind is, how do we find balance between this and also holding men accountable and responsible for what they're doing, which I believe is at the core of what patriarchy is supposed to be, and that's precisely because at some points in history or whatever, it's failing to fulfill this function of holding men responsible for what they're doing. That's over time, there are bad men taking over and ruling this world in a way that is then criticized quite fairly, I would say. But yes, thank you so much, and maybe let's discuss this in the second episode. So stay tuned, guys.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being there.